What's up, guys? Teddy Cornwell here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk, and there's something about the underdog. Today, we have the mind behind the Fyre Festival, an entrepreneur, a hustler. Hate him or love him, the one and only Mr. Billy McFarland. What is up, sir? How you doing today?
Teddy, like super motivated by the whole Underdog podcast concept. So let's do this. Excited to dive in and see if we can have some fun today.
We'll definitely have fun, and I'm going to jump right into it. The Fyre Festival. I said you love it, you hate it. Everyone has their mixed emotions. Everyone's entitled to their emotion. Now, to me, when I think of it, you think of a con man or the person who takes all the blame for it. Really is you. But when we look up who was the founder, it's not just the name Billy McFarland. We see rapper Ja Rule on that, was also a business partner. So, Billy, the question to you is, how did he dodge all this, I guess, backlash, punishment? And then what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, good question. So I was certainly the one in charge of everything from the business standpoint. So when it came to fundraising, which is like the crime I committed and why I went to jail, I was the one that was guilty there. I think this public perception doesn't understand like just how hard we were really trying to make this event a reality. So the team, for as short-sighted as some of our decisions really were, legitimately thought that we were going to pull this off. So at the end of the day, like they didn't deserve to get in trouble because I was the one going to investors with bullshit basically to raise the money.
That is an interesting thing. So, I guess to the question to you is, did you ever see it actually being a successful venture? Was that the goal of it, or was it more of a piece by piece event?
So I was looking over some like bank statements literally yesterday from like the weeks leading up to the festival. And 2 weeks before the event, I spent $280,000 on padding to go underneath the tents of the festival. So my mindset was clearly like, not only is this going to work, it's going to work to the point where we need all the little luxuries. And I was laughing like, yeah, we'd love to have that back. But clearly my mindset at the time was I would not have spent $250,000 on, under tent padding that no one would ever see if I didn't truly think the event was going to happen.
That is an interesting perspective. And I think here's the $1 million question, which is, again, cutting to the chase. Yaron Lavi, hopefully I said that name correct. One of your main advisors told you to push it back to November, and you want it in spring. And just like me, I can't fault when I want something.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do it as soon as I can do it. Now, the $1 million question is, do you think if you had actually waited, if you had actually postponed the event, got the details, got more organization on it, do you think it would have been a success and not gone down as one of the biggest failures of all time?
So there were two things they did that were totally wrong. One was just like lying to investors about finances to get money, and two was scheduling the event in a totally unrealistic time frame. And I think I would still be here, but probably a completely different tune had we given ourselves an extra 8 months or 7 months, and this would hopefully be a success story rather than like a failure potential comeback story. So yeah, all came down to timing and just like totally set this unrealistic time frame. And that came on the heels of this like viral marketing launch video we did. And I was just so dedicated to making it happen. I just couldn't understand like what reality really was.
And you would say that there were people telling you not to do it at the time, and that you were really just locked in. Was it really something that you couldn't even care what other people were saying from the outside, Billy?
Yeah, it was for sure a standpoint where like most smart people would look at it and be like, what you're trying to do in 4 months wasn't possible. And I think that what many people don't realize is it took kind of defying the odds so frequently and so many times successfully to get to a point where we could have failed on that level. So I was like wrongly in this mindset where like you said no, 15 times in the past 3 months, and I proved you wrong those 15 times. So why is this one any different? And I just took it to a level that just became like too far and just too impractical to pass through.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a mentality of being wanting something or doing all you can to reach that dream, but people
Mm-hmm.
were affected, obviously. And I think what people don't understand is it wasn't just the rich and famous. I mean, do you ever have any guilt for the regular or the working class people who put their hard-earned money into getting a ticket? I mean, is that something that you've been able to kind of navigate over and move on from, or how has that guilt been part of your daily life?
Yeah, a huge part. I actually ran into like a former festival attendee who I didn't know before on the street a few weeks ago, and he took me to lunch today. So like literally just got back from it an hour or two ago. So I think hearing his perspective was like super interesting. And obviously everybody has their own story, but it was just supposed to be a marquee moment in so many people's lives, whether that was like the local contractor to the C-level executive to the ticket, buyer. Everybody viewed like Fyre as their figurative ticket to something else in life, and I let them all down. So my mentality now is like, how can I build something that's so impactful yet so inclusive that I can kind of fulfill that dream and desire that I was once promising to just so many different types of people.
You know what's interesting to me? The first thing that I'm getting from you is not this evil, this despicable human being. And I think that's what Netflix and the Hulu documentary kind of portrayed you as, when it's really almost, if we look at it, take a step back, it's a dreamer of a sense trying to achieve a goal. Granted, there were stuff that you did besides the event that weren't correct, but it to me is interesting that we villainize someone for, in a way, chasing their dreams. Do you think that the Netflix and Hulu documentary were completely off on everything? As I've heard, you haven't even been able to watch it yet. Is that still accurate, Billy?
Yeah, I haven't watched it, and that's just like due to me not having the balls, I guess, to face a lot of like what was said in the documentaries. And I think like there's probably some sort of watch thing that I'll need to do at some point in the future. Um, yeah, just like looking back, I was certainly in a period of my life where I was acting like a total scumbag, and there's no way around it. However, I think the general mentality is that my intentions were to like steal X millions of dollars and run away, and like that obviously didn't happen. And like even seeing now friends who I haven't seen for 5 or 6 years who have been affected in a certain way by all this media, documentaries, whatever, I'll go and see them, and for like the first 5 minutes, they're almost like a little guarded and like on edge, and then I can literally see like the mental snap in their mind, like, oh, he's the same Billy who I knew like 8 years ago, and like not the one who I started thinking of like over the past couple of years. So it's just like crazy how far the media goes. And even the people who knew me best, like still take that face-to-face meeting to realize like, yes, he is highly flawed, but he's not out here to hurt all of us as he might've been portrayed.
And the media, I hate saying it, but the media does portray people in a way to get views, way to get, that popular opinion. We don't often see the good things. I heard Javante Davis was accused of all this stuff from his ex-wife, all this. We hear about that, but we don't hear about how his ex-wife came out and said that that wasn't true. And what really interests me is that you're not as bad as everyone thought you were. And this new venture, correct me if I'm wrong again, but you're looking to, in a sense, repay people. Is that accurate, Billy?
Yeah. So everything I do will be to like right my wrongs. And like that needs to be obviously like a small percentage of that, like until I find some level of success. I think like one topic I haven't really discussed yet though is how the media landscape has changed in the years I've been gone. It's actually benefited me in this current situation where this whole YouTube podcast concept where so many new media personalities are essentially just like upseating all of like the massive incumbent companies is allowing like a platform and a second chance for a lot of people like me, whereas we would have probably been kicked out of the door and just like denied a platform by mainstream media 5 or 6 years ago. But now they kind of have to give guys like me a platform because like the big podcast hosts like you are already doing it. So really interesting times where I think I'm super grateful to like be trying to do pirate and trying to rebuild right now, because I think I'll have a fair shot, or at least a fair chance. Whereas I might not have had that, a number of years ago.
100%. And we had Ryan Lochte on the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and I never asked Ryan the question about
Mm-hmm.
what happened in Rio, and I'm not going to ask you really what happened in it. I think sometimes we make mistakes as humans. That's life, and I think part of you being able to kind of move on is watching that documentary, watching that, and and seeing how they portray it. Obviously, it will
Yeah.
take balls. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, in prison, you were there for 4 years. Did
Mhm.
you learn anything about yourself in those times when you're in isolation or just in probably one of the darkest moments, hours of human, really civilization being locked alone? Did you learn anything about yourself, really?
Yeah, I think like in these 4 or 5 months leading up to the Fyre Festival, so many like unbelievable life-changing experiences were happening. And as my life was changing in so many ways, I just started taking shortcuts and I was finding pride in just like pulling off this wild shit that I never knew was possible, not realizing that my short-term actions would have like longer ramifications and like whatever that success was. I think like once I was sitting back there, like especially in solitary, none of that like seemingly cool shit that I had done years before really mattered. What mattered was how I treated people and like what I did in the process of doing it. So this time for me, it's like all about the process. It's feeling comfortable with the people around me. It's treating them right. It's getting treated like correctly back in exchange, understanding that I'm hopefully blessed with 30, 40 more years of actually working. So there is no rush to find that short-term outcome, but there is a rush to build like long, meaningful relationships.
100%. And do you think you will be ever able to forgive yourself? I think what others think of you is material. Do you think you'll
Mhm.
ever be able to forgive yourself for your actions? I mean, that is the only way that you, Billy McFarland, will be able to move
Yeah.
on.
So I think it's kind of like a weird dichotomy here where like my crimes are so much worse than the money, but at the same time, like I can't look people in the eye and feel truly like forgiven until they're all like repaid in every sense of that word. So I feel like there is like at least a metric tied to it. So I know what I have to do. It's going to take a long time to make it happen.
That is fair. And did the regular people, the working class people,
Mhm.
did they ever
Mhm.
get a refund? Did they ever get any compensation for this? I was looking through your comments, or actually, I was looking through the
Mhm.
full Send podcast that you did just to kind
Yeah.
of brief myself, and I saw some random guy. I don't know if this is true or not. Says that we spent our wedding money to go to that. Did these people ever get a refund on this event?
So I think I'm still trying to get a grasp as to who's owed and how much they're owed. And it's gonna take time to get a grasp on it. But like people like that, if they are owed, like they deserve to get paid back. So for me, it's getting back to work. It's been a little over 4 months since my sentence ended. Starting to work, starting to earn, but like the dollar figures just like aren't crazy yet. But hopefully in 12, 18, 24 months, I will be making, something where it's significant enough to start paying back, as many people as possible.
And when you came out of prison, I mean, what was that feeling like? I always
Yeah.
ask the other question for people, what was that success like? But what was that feeling of walking out of prison to
Mhm.
almost a new start?
I think like 90% of the world seems to be exactly the same. However, I have this like nagging, I think, hangover from the effects of the time alone from in prison, where I think when I was 24 doing Fyre, I was pretty naive, where I felt like I could just do whatever and there were no consequences. But then when I went to jail, I probably like snapped to the other extreme where it's like I could do nothing and someone could put me in a concrete like bunker for the rest of my life. And I think the reality is, somewhere in the middle. But I'm still kind of suffered from that extreme like paranoia where like, hey, I could walk down the street the wrong way and someone can come and just like snatch me up and put me in jail forever. So I think like it just takes time to heal from that.
And I mean, some people and don't agree with your sentence, think that it
Mhm.
could be longer for affecting so many innocent
Yeah.
people. I mean, how did you get out on 4 years instead of saying that 6 years? Was it good behavior? What was that
Mhm.
deal that you were able to get out so early?
So in the federal system, everybody gets 15% off their time automatically. And then if you get in trouble, which I did, you can like lose some of that time, which I also did. Um, there was a bill passed in 2018 called the First Step Act, which basically allowed nonviolent offenders to also earn a year off. So I benefited from that as well. But, once again, it's like didn't get anything that every other, federal inmate gets as well.
And stepping out into, I guess, the real world again, did you feel scared? Has there been any
Mhm.
events where people have threatened you or tried to come at you? This is got to be a real fear for you, right?
Yeah, I think like for the most part, the people who take the time to come and approach me have been super positive. There have been a couple of like scarier incidents recently, but for the most part, it's been okay.
I mean, have you ever thought about getting a security guard? Is that in the works?
Yeah, I had a couple like, two guys like with their faces covered with like scarves or whatever come basically try to break into my apartment the other day looking for me. So that was a little scary. Not really sure who sent them or whatever, but yeah. So I think like just still trying to learn and understand what's going on.
Wow. I mean, I'm sure many of us can't understand what that's like living with a mistake. The word
Hmm.
mistake is something that human beings are accustomed to. Now, I have to turn it back to you did do such a amazing job of promoting the event. There's no secret. I mean, names Kendall
Yeah.
Jenner, Bella Hadid, Emily Ratajkowski. I mean, how did you get those people to commit to something that they really had no clue how it would affect their appearance?
Yeah. So I think I was just like really good at creating momentum. And I was able to find like different experiences or concepts or ways to bring people together that they just weren't used to doing. And that was just like through this amazing island experience. So we started with obviously a much smaller like cast of characters, but as I kind of figured out like the formula and really like the human effects of just connecting people around these life-defying adventures, the lore and the folktale of what was happening started to grow. And when we announced it, it kind of hit at the perfect time where word around like the circles of like New York City was getting around about like what we were doing in the islands. And then we come out with this like glossy video and the rest is history.
Do you think if, obviously social media has evolved into now really more prevalent than ever, do you think if social media was as strong as it is now, that you would never be able to even get these celebrities, or would that even be possible?
I think that people who have a lot, which you can like, I guess, pinpoint a lot of the bigger influencers in this category, are generally looking for ways to challenge and push themselves. And I think underlying these like trips that we did where we hosted various talent on the islands, we were finding really like unique and spontaneous ways to just push the bounds of what we all believed to be was possible. And I don't think that mentality has changed. So, I will try to kind of recreate the magic behind that just in different ways this time. But the concept of high achieving people looking for ways to push more and really prove to themselves what is or isn't possible. I think it's existed since like, the beginning of humanity.
Would agree. How much of this would you say was your ability to talk? Do you think if you
Mhm.
didn't have the ability to kind of smooth or talk someone over, that you would never have been able to get them in the first place?
I think my biggest like strength and my biggest flaw is that I just do shit. So it's like, I can like come up with a game plan, but then I actually go and try it in like an hour and like it might be better, it might be way worse than I like pitched, but at least I just go and try it. And I just didn't spend enough time analyzing things. So, I needed more like strategy, but I was all action. I think that's what separated me from a lot of like the New York scene where people are always like talking about businesses and talking about game plans. And I was out there just like doing, doing, doing. And that was magnetic to a lot of the talent who just wanted to be involved in that.
So I guess tying it all, if you didn't have a beach trip in paradise or the Bermudas, if you had it
Mhm.
in, say, Miami, Florida, or a different
Yeah.
location, do you think you would have built that hype? Do you think the hype really came because it was an exotic, a unique place? Do you think that ties into it all?
I think what really just tied together was this concept of pushing the boundaries with other super interesting people. And it doesn't need to be an island, right? There's like many vehicles I think that people can get together out of their comfort zones. But that was just like my favorite place in the world. So it was very natural for me to do it there. But yeah, can certainly be done in other kind of locales and not just amazing islands.
And have you talked to any of these celebrities or had
Mhm.
contact with them since this? Because they've got to feel some kind of guilt for leading people into this festival.
They had no way to know, right? And like whether it's me or some other brand who contacts and does a deal with some sort of like entertainer, like their job isn't to do like more due diligence than the rest of the world. So they can't really be blamed for any downside. And I think I was far from the first and certainly won't be the last brand that doesn't succeed when working with talent. Um, People have been pretty receptive, and there certainly is like a large number of people that are just like fuck off and just totally don't want to work with me or even talk to me again. But others, I think, are just like intrigued by the lessons that I may have learned, and if I really did learn those lessons, how I internalize them and change my actions, and hopefully just like do something positive going forward.
And what did you learn? Because there's got to be many things to have learned from this.
So much. And like there's like the corny stuff, which is totally true, such as like the power of transparency and integrity and honesty. Like that's all the most important thing, and it all like rings true. But I think it comes down to this like long-term horizon. And I'm trying to build for 30 years from now. And that's like really just taking an audit of the people around me. And it's like, am I surrounding myself with good, honest people who I'm building trust with? And like, I want to be that phone call if someone's in trouble or if they need something, like they call me first because they trust me. And I think that is kind of my motivation and goal. And I just didn't have that before.
So then to future investors and people on your new project, the question has to be obvious. Why should people trust you? I know that's the tough question, painful question to hear, but why should people trust you?
What's kind of crazy is like, it's almost been the opposite, where I have a lot of like people reaching out, trying to work, with us and Pirate in the group. And I think I just need to be careful and like take it slow and not really let a lot of people in so early on. We're still figuring things out. So it's been pretty interesting, but I think like for better or worse, I've always attracted, like the ambitious crazies. So trying not to like, let bad people come in and like warp judgment and thinking right now, and just like taking a more like steadfast long-term approach.
Now, what would you say to someone who is trying to do a business venture ethically, successfully, and legal? What would your advice be after everything you've seen and learned, Billy?
Yeah, if you're operating honestly, just go for it. And there's so much like analysis by paralysis, like where people just like overthink and they're trying to do everything so perfectly, they never start. If you're telling the truth, if you're doing things the right way, if you're not hurting anybody, just go. And the only way to create momentum is to start moving. And momentum like is the most underlying factor of success. So someone's ability to create and sustain momentum, I think, is like how anybody can like judge another entrepreneur or business person.
And I guess being an entrepreneur, you did raise a lot of money. How would a regular person ethically get that money? Is that even possible to get such a large sum of money to you in an ethical way?
I think it's really hard, right? Like it just takes years of getting to the point where you can legitimately create a business or momentum that could benefit from outside capital. I think like the reality is like someone could wake up tomorrow with a good business idea, but it's unlikely they're ready or have the experience that they can actually take advantage of X dollars of outside money to amplify their business. So you need to go through that totally shit period where you're like failing every day to get to the point where you're ready to pour fuel on the fire, fuel being the capital to really expand. So there is no shortcut is what I'm trying to say.
There is no shortcut. And that is ultimately what it comes down to now. I guess my final question is, do you legally have to pay all these people back?
Yeah, so I have mandated restitution. And what that means is I have a percentage of income garnished essentially forever until that restitution is paid. And like once again, it's been 4 months and super early, but I go every 3 or 4 weeks and give a check back on what I've earned and started paying. It's been small numbers, but starting to make progress.
We always say that sometimes these small mistakes or big mistakes really cost us. For you, Billy, it ultimately did cost you.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, on the positive note, you learned a lot. I think we all make mistakes. I think to me, what was interesting, I expected to come in here and think of you as almost a villain, almost a despicable person who affected thousands of innocent working class people. But to me, I see a guy who made a mistake. Whether it was a intentional mistake or not is a different question in this, but it was a mistake nonetheless. If you truly believed that this was going to work, I think people need to understand that. And I think people need to realize that, in life, sometimes goals and dreams just don't happen to work out.
Yeah.
I mean, Billy, I really do appreciate you taking the time. Now, before we go, the floor is yours. Did you want to plug anything where we can find your social media, where we can find that new company? The floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you. So working on Pirate now and trying to get back to bringing people together, but this time it's all about inclusivity and really just finding ways to utilize technology to amplify everything we're doing. So at Pirate Billy on socials, and I have an ask for you, which is one day, if Pirate succeeds, it is up and running at some cool location somewhere, would love to do round 2 of the podcast from the location and hopefully tell more of the arc of what I hope to be a pretty exciting story.
I would be honored. And I actually do have to ask one more question.
Yeah, for sure.
Is this true? And someone tweeted out a picture of a planning notebook found on the ground. And I cannot tell, or if I don't know if this is real, but there's a list of things that, organizers and you guys wanted to order. And there were things like 6,000 Skittles, 9,000 Glow Lollipops.
I actually have never seen it, so I'm not sure. So I really don't know. Can you send me the link?
Yeah, I will. And then the thing is that the I guess joke is, did anyone actually, think about planning the actual festival? In terms of you guys were looking at lollipops and Skittles, but again, I guess, we can't trust what everyone says or thinks.
But I think like that one expense that I was joking about earlier is like both good and bad, right? Like I think it's good in that it shows my intent to do it, but it's ridiculous in that we had so many bigger problems and like this flooring that no one would ever see. So it's like, why are we buying it? But at the same time, if we didn't think it was going to work, why are we buying it too? So it shows like my stupidity, but it also shows what I think was like real intent. So
I guess the question to the viewers is, what would you do if you were a 24-year-old with the world in your hand?
Yeah.
Would you act different? How would you act? I mean, ladies,
Yeah, I think like my number one advice and like thing that caused the success that I did have was like this mentality of don't stop moving. Like you need to go, like action creates action. So go create your own momentum, but don't forget, that you have 40 years of like working ahead of you at 24. So you don't need it all next week or next month or in the next 5 years. So take your time, but still go fast. Just realize you're going to be sprinting for a long period of time.
100%. Ladies and gentlemen, Billy McFarland, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on this YouTube video. Go check out Billy's stuff. You might learn a thing about stuff there. Really, hopefully the best for you, Billy. I don't think people should ever, wish someone bad will. I don't think that's ever a good look for a human. So from me to you, best of luck in your future endeavors, sir. And I hope everything works out, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Underdog, had a lot of fun.
Hey, I did too. Underdog out.